You can see Steve Keeley shooting this video from his cell phone. He says bulletin airplane crash there on Roosevelt Boulevard. He says fires burning in multiple spots on Cottman Avenue. He says pieces of airplane scattered there on the ground. Jason Martinez with this video saying this is being described as a plane crash in the area of Bustleton and Cottman Avenues in Northeast Philly. That's a doorbell camera provided by a viewer there to Fox 29. Let's take it full here. Look at that. And you see the nighttime sky light up in orange. Wow.
We had 2 planes crash within the span of 72 hours. Now, it's just really hard to say that this is all just a coincidence, isn't it? At the same time, we've got the FBI preparing select cities for World War III with large-scale military exercises. There's also the fact that President Donald Trump announced early in his term that he wants to protect the country with an iron dome of its own. Everything's starting to align here, and something tells us that this could be big. Now, let's go ahead and start off with this medical transport jet that just recently crashed in Philadelphia. Real quick, guys, thanks for hitting the like button. Thank you for subscribing.
Steve, I don't know if you can hear Steve Keeley or on the other side of the street. I just saw we just showed your tweet at that diner.
Jason, that's the story I was telling you when Dawn. I got off the air with you. I went in there. The police let me through the line. The manager let me in, and he showed me on his phone this piece. And as I said in the tweet, that piece didn't just go through the window and land on a table. It went through the diner, past about 3 booths by the salad bar, and then hit a diner on the far side of the diner, eating restaurant, and it hit him in the head. I said, was he okay? He goes, no, I think he's hurt real bad. And so there was a big heavy piece of metal that came flying through the diner, and the diner is right next to the McDonald's you're looking at. And so that, you were talking about a half a mile, that, as Greg pans to the left, right across all 12 lanes of the boulevard, and then smoke. Greg, come back where I am, and you can still see smoke going up over the AutoZone store, which is at the corner of Cottman and the boulevard. And that smoke is about 3 or 4 blocks deep. And the reason the mayor was staying away from saying numbers is because you saw them. They fluctuated. The officials here on scene, as I reported way back when, were told 6 people on that plane, and then the plane people confirmed that. But the mayor also is knowing the scene there, and she and everybody else out here is fearing that that number and the death toll could grow because of the injuries and maybe fatalities on the ground. And I was showing you and talking about SUVs and trucks that were completely on fire, completely gutted out, and that was almost initially afterward. And I had said I had come from the 5 o'clock live shot, which maybe was a half a mile from here. I was in that traffic, and it was stop and go traffic. And it's a busy mall, it's a busy time of day, and this is maybe one of the busiest intersections in Philadelphia, the Boulevard and Cottman Avenue. And there's a lot of people eating dinner, and so many fast food restaurants you talked about, Jason. And I was in that Cane's Chicken place where I was close to the scene, right by the plaza entrance, where all those flames were burning. So that is the fear, that there could be more deaths and fatalities than just on the plane itself because of where it crashed and landed.
1 plane crashing can be called an accident. 2 planes consecutively crashing can at least be called a coincidence. A third would show us that this is a pattern. And that piece of metal, it looks pretty familiar, doesn't it? Now, I can't say that I'm an expert, but it looks like a medical oxygen post valve, possibly one that was used for an oxygen tank that could have been on board the plane. Now, from what we know, the plane was a medical transport jet carrying a child patient, her mother, and 4 others. It's been said that it crashed 30 seconds after takeoff. Now, what's really heartbreaking to hear is that the child had just completed treatment for a life-threatening condition. The Learjet 55 was being operated under Jet Rescue Air Ambulance, and they said that the flight was originally from Mexico. It just took a stop in Missouri onto its final destination of Tijuana. Now, this is the 2nd fatal incident for Jet Rescue in 15 months. Back in 2023, 5 people died as their plane overran a runway and it crashed into a hillside. And of course, we have to acknowledge that this is happening within just days of the incident in Washington, D.C. President Trump has taken to Truth Social to talk about the crash, saying, "So sad to see the plane go down in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. More innocent souls lost, you guys." Our people are totally engaged. First responders are already being given credit for doing such a great job. More to follow. God bless you guys. One question that's lingering in our minds at this time is, why did this plane crash this fast? So here's what aviation attorney Sal Lagonia had to say about this.
I think I've watched that video over and over, maybe about 100 times already now. And the one thing that really stands out is the angle of descent. That thing is coming down, like you said, it's like a rocket. I first thought that may have been what hit Philadelphia until we realized it was an airplane. Airplanes, it's hard to do that with an airplane. As short and stubby as the wings are on a Learjet 55, you still have that ability to move forward with a plane on the most circumstances. The word catastrophic has been bandied about all night. That had to happen on board, whether it was catastrophic engine failure in both engines, in which case you would have expected that there would have been a mayday call, but listening to the tape of the tower, there was no mayday call. Or some kind of fuel exhaustion or fuel, it wouldn't have been fuel exhaustion, but it would have been fuel contamination that took both engines out at the same time. And then we get into the type of aircraft it is. It's a medevac aircraft, which has oxygen on board. My understanding that the police have found at least one oxygen tank far away from the scene. That could indicate that it came out of the aircraft while the aircraft was descending from 1,600 feet. It wasn't up that high.
Well, it was at 1,600 feet, then dropping, 2,400 feet per minute, as you said, shooting down to Earth like a rocket. You can almost see it's traveling at this high speed, full throttle, nose down. Do you see a possibility of maybe a stall, and would that result in that trajectory or no?
I agree with the other guests. I think that's highly unlikely. I think there's something much more going on before the plane starts down. It really is out of control. You could see it. You could see something venting out of the plane as it's coming down if you look closely. And then finally, when it hits the ground, it makes that huge explosion. Why? Because it's full of fuel. It's starting its trip back to Springfield. And so there's a lot of fuel on board, almost 1,000 gallons of fuel. And that's going to hit. Any spark is going to create an explosion, the likes of what we saw.
I'm going to keep tabs on these crashes because something seems off with them, with some suggesting that these might not be accidents at all. There's also the matter of the crash in DC. And while most of these names of people involved have been released, one name continues to be hidden. The Army has refused to release the name of the pilot of the Black Hawk helicopter. All we know is that the pilot was female. Reports show that the helicopter was flying more than 100 feet above its limit. The unintended soldier was said to have had more than 500 hours of flight experience. What's weird is that the other two soldiers who were aboard the helicopter have already been identified publicly. Now, from what we know, the family of the third soldier has asked the Army not to reveal her name at this point. Moving on, President Trump recently signed an executive order that's meant to protect us from attacks coming from within the air. Something that sounds ominous if we go by what we've seen in just the last few days.
President Trump signed an executive order to build a next-generation space-based missile defense architecture to protect the U.S. from threats posed by a new generation of hypersonic glide missiles, another indication that space is becoming a warfighting domain.
We need to immediately begin the construction of a state-of-the-art Iron Dome missile defense shield, which will be able to protect Americans.
A reference to Israel's short-range missile defense system, but the Iron Dome only defends against short-range missiles in a country the size of New Jersey.
It's a metaphor. What this is about is, I would say, an agenda, a broad agenda for trying to get after the spectrum of air and missile threats.
China, Russia, North Korea, and Iran are racing to develop hypersonic weapons and drones that move so fast and maneuver at low orbit that they can evade current U.S. missile defense. Vice Admiral James Searing was the head of the Pentagon's Missile Defense Agency.
We protect the entire United States today against ICBM attack. Against a hypersonic threat, it would be much more difficult without a much more robust sensor network. The big gap in my mind is the sensing capability, being able to actually see it and track it.
Critics of the Trump administration are saying that this is going to cost hundreds of billions of dollars. Although it's kind of funny that these same critics, they didn't have anything to say when we sent over $100 billion to foreign nations, money that they use to protect their other countries. But President Trump using money to protect the United States, and all of a sudden it's too expensive? Yeah, go figure. Now, in line with that, the FBI recently concluded military training exercises in New York. Now, you might think that this is normal, but the 6-day exercise was focused on nuclear incident training. Are you thinking what I'm thinking? The training had multiple agencies involved. This includes the Department of Defense, Department of Energy, National Nuclear Security Administration, the FBI, and the Department of Homeland Security. Now, some reports say that this could be preparations for another world war, even though the same kind of exercise was done last year in Houston. And according to the FBI, this is to ensure that they're prepared to respond to a possible nuclear incident. Now, again, kind of unnerving that these events are happening one after another. Like, do you think that we should at all be worried about these accidents and exercises? Let me know, guys. Now, I want to redirect you to a previous live stream that I did where I talked about the ladies of The View. It looks like they have not learned their lesson because they're still talking on air about the importance of being woke. You got to check that one out. As always, appreciate y'all hitting the like button. Thanks so much for subscribing. We'll see you next time.